Welcome to Reinventing-U. I'm your host, Danielle Silverman. I believe that in today's world of ever-constant evolution, the only career change that matters is when what you do matches who you are and what you believe. This show is where you'll learn how embracing change and reinventing yourself will help you navigate any disruptions and lead a life of happiness and fulfillment, especially in this ever-changing world. Your purpose and your meaning will drive your personal transformation. As I like to say, it's your vision, your life. Be passionate about it. Reinventing-U starts now. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Reinventing-U, a podcast where we talk about all things career-related. I'm your host, Danielle Silverman, and today I'd like to talk to you about what it means to understand your company culture and to navigate your way through it. So maybe you're a manager and you have your eye on a director job, or you're a director and you want to work your way up to the C-suite. Does it often feel to you as if it's almost impossible to do that? Do you feel that you're being looked over or looked past? Do you sometimes feel invisible? Well, let's look into what it means to understand who you are and how you navigate through the corporate world that you're in. And then, because if we do that, if we figure out how you can navigate your way through it, you might just be able to land the job that you want without necessarily having to uproot yourself and look somewhere else. I sometimes think about the corporate world as a jungle. So I thought we'd grab our metaphorical machetes and pave a clear path through the thick foliage of company culture. If you've ever felt lost in the jungle, or if you ever do feel lost in this jungle, stick around. Hopefully by the end, you'll have a map of what it is you need, not just to survive, but to thrive. So there are 5 topics that I'd like to talk to you about today. The first one is how you view leadership. The second is visibility, your visibility. The third being how others perceive you and talk a little bit about personal branding, your personal branding. The fourth will be about strategic speaking and what that means. And the fifth, of course, no conversation would be complete without talking about networking. Often a dirty word for some people, but it really shouldn't be. So let's talk about leadership a little bit. You know, it's more than just a title. It's what I would call a narrative. Because when you're leading, you're not just managing processes and people. You're shaping stories. It's also about setting a vision. It's about influencing other people and about fostering an environment where everyone thrives. So by understanding the leadership dynamics that are within your organization, you can align yourself with the company values and establish yourself as a key player. The first thing I think you should do is reflect on your core beliefs. What do you stand for? Make that your personal leadership philosophy. And this philosophy will become your compass, one that guides your decisions and your actions. The other thing I recommend that you do is to lead by listening. You know, leaders often believe that they should have all the answers, but the magic lies in the questions and in the listening. So dive deep into conversations. Don't be afraid of them. Let your team's insights shape the solutions. I see notes from Simon Sinek every day talking about the role of the leader, how the leader does not have all of the answers necessarily. On the contrary, the leader is a true leader if he or she trusts that the members of his or her team will be able to find the solutions. Another thing you should do as a leader is really build your resilience. Everybody faces setbacks, but instead of seeing them as failures, treat them as lessons. Every day we come across something that seems to be a roadblock, but in reality, those supposed failures are the things by which we learn. So Don't be afraid to share your challenges with your team. Make them partners in your resilience journey. I remember once telling a client that I didn't have all the answers, but that I would come back with an answer. It's okay to not know. It's okay as long as you are taking care of the issue, trying to figure out the answer. And believe it or not, that sort of removes some of the stress from you, because it's the idea of thinking that you have to know everything that builds the stress. So instead, build resilience, learn from lessons, share challenges. It's much easier when things are shared. And speaking of sharing, the other thing that is a really strong part of good leadership is delegation. And it's not just about handing off tasks or supposedly empowering people, but trusting that you can give your team, each member of your team, some responsibility that will help them grow. So you're fostering trust and you're fostering growth in your team. That is what delegation is about. It's not just about handing things off, taking them off your desk. Another thing is to celebrate small wins. Most people think, oh yeah, that was just part of my job, or we don't, you wait until the big thing happens and then we celebrate that. But in order to get to that big thing, there are a million little things in between. And every single time we celebrate one of those small things, it boosts morale. And it shows that every step forward counts. And finally, it's really important to embody growth. When I say embody, I mean to showcase it as an example, if you will. Commit to your own personal development. As you grow, so does your team. Your team will be inspired by your journey. And so you're setting an example for the members of your team. And growth, learning in any way, attending conferences, taking training, reading magazines, going to a conference where there's hands-on experience with peers. All of that is about growing and learning. Very important qualities. So the first was leadership. The second thing I'd like to talk to you about, if you're interested in understanding where you're going within the organization, and particularly if you feel that you're being overlooked. Your value doesn't just exist in what you do, but in how others perceive what you do. So the idea is to become more visible by illuminating your value, by bringing it to the forefront. So visibility is really about being recognized for your contributions. And it's ensuring that the right people know about your accomplishments. So you could do that through regular check-ins with superiors. You can showcase some of the successes of your team, or you can take on company projects that have company-wide impacts. So what are some of the things you can do? You can create a portfolio of all of your contributions, sort of like your visual CV that highlights your growth and the impact that you've had. And it's really a good idea to do that on a regular basis and not wait years, because it's about understanding what your contributions have been and what your accomplishments and achievements have been, not just for the yearly assessment, but for yourself, for your own motivation as well. Make sure that you are present at meetings, at town halls, whatever group meetings there are within the organization, but have an engaging presence. In other words, instead of just speaking at a meeting, engage, ask questions, respond, be present, and listen as well. Your active involvement is what makes you more visible, but not just talking for talking's sake. Think about how you can contribute to the conversation or ask questions very simply. And that sometimes just opens a conversation that can be very interesting. Actively seek feedback. So don't wait for your annual review. Just ask, continuously ask, and showcase your commitment to growth and to your own improvement. And think about having projects that involve different departments, so that are collaborative, because what happens is all of a sudden you're getting other people to get to know who you are instead of just your little circle. And then think about your thoughts. Think about what you believe in. If there is an internal platform where you can write an article, for example, or where you can initiate a discussion, do so. Become a personal thought leader. Become a voice that people value, that people will know because they've seen you in this format, in this online forum, if you will. And I would also say that it's very important for you to constantly recognize the contributions of others. It might sound counterintuitive, but when you shine a light on other people, your value increases. Your value as a collaborative leader all of a sudden becomes evident. Leadership, visibility. There's a lot more to both of those. There's a lot more to everything I'm going to be saying today, but it's just to give you an idea of where we're going. The third thing, and they're all of equal value. I was almost going to say, oh, this part is really, really valuable, but you know what? They're all valuable. This segment is about perception and about personal branding. And if I dare say, it really is about creating your legacy. So branding is known for marketing. You know, it's how when you see the red Coca-Cola logo, you know what it means, right? When you see that apple, you know what it means. It's a brand. But branding isn't about how you sell yourself. And each of those logos means something to you in terms of quality, in terms of service. And it's not just, as I said, about how you sell yourself. It's about how you define who you are and how you live who you are, because you have to be able to live your brand. You have to not just talk the talk, but walk the talk and walk the walk. So perception is everything in the corporate world. It is a reality. And how you're perceived influences your career trajectory, whether you realize it or not. And that's where personal branding steps in. So what do you want to be known for? Do you want to be known for innovation, for reliability, for strategic thinking? Whatever it is, once you identify what that is, you need to consistently demonstrate and communicate these values in your work. Your personal brand is your career story. So you can help make it a compelling one. In fact, you should make it a compelling one. Several things that need to go into this. One is you need to have a clear vision. So define what your personal brand is. And there are many, many ways of doing that online as well. Or you can hire somebody to help you define your personal brand. What do you stand for? At the very essence. And once that's clear, once that's very clear for you, every action and every decision that you make is going to align seamlessly. I like to think of it as, what is the vision of the world that you want to live in? And then how do you define your vision with respect to that, your small piece of the world? Because we can't always necessarily affect the entire world. What is your world? And when you've done that, try and figure out the stories that make up that brand. Share your journey. Talk about the things that you've done, not just the highs, also the lows. Anything that humanizes you is also making your brand relatable. And you also need to be consistent in your actions, consistent in your communications. All of that reinforces your brand's authenticity. When you've figured out the essence of your brand, then you can start building relationships with people who believe in your brand, and their advocacy begins to amplify your reach. The other thing that you need to do in terms of perceptions, in terms of branding, is to understand that times change. So your brand should also change. It should be flexible. It doesn't mean that it has to be completely different, but it has to be periodically revisited, is to see if it is still relevant, or you simply need to refine it. And then the other thing is that you always need to have some sort of feedback, because again, as we're talking about perception, your brand's perception lies in somebody else's eyes, not in yours. So you have to regularly gauge how others perceive you. Ask for feedback. Leadership, visibility, perception, and personal branding. The fourth segment is what I call strategic speaking. Have you ever been in a meeting where you felt your voice was lost in the noise? You tried to speak, but everybody else was speaking louder than you were, or either you're shy, or perhaps you consider yourself an introvert and you're afraid to interrupt somebody. Well, strategic speaking is the art of speaking with intent and with purpose. So instead of speaking often, for example, you can prioritize speaking when you can add value. You can provide a unique perspective, or you can drive a decision. So this way, when you speak, people listen. What's the expression? Words have weight. But strategically spoken words, they can shift paradigms. So some of the things you can do: you can use data as your ally. You can base your arguments on data, or data, however you pronounce it, because data lends credibility and weight to your words. Learn the power of pause. Effective speaking isn't about filling every silence. You can use pauses for emphasis and to let important points sink in. Another thing that's very important when you're speaking is to engage people, not to dictate things to them, but to engage in a dialogue, because that's much, much more powerful than a monologue. You're listening to me, it's a monologue. If I could speak to you directly and engage you in a conversation about this, it would be so much more powerful. So engage your listeners in a conversation. Make the discussions collaborative. The other thing you can do is craft your story, craft your narrative, frame your message as a story. We tell that to people who are interviewing, tell a story. Well, it's the same thing internally. You have to continue telling your stories, and that is based on your achievements, based on what's going on around you and what you've done. A story resonates much more than just a mere list of points. And the other thing that keeps coming up in every single part of these segments is to listen actively. So before you respond to anything while the other person is talking, listen. Genuinely listen. Try to understand the underlying sentiments that the person is trying to say. And then understand also that every audience is different. So you need to tailor your approach based on who the listeners are to make your messages more relatable. So before you go into a meeting, or if you're going to be giving a quick speech, think about who the audience is. Think about what they are coming here to hear, what they're coming to that room or to listen to you. What are they coming to hear? And why do they want to hear it? And base your approach, base your comments on that. A lot of people I know are afraid to speak. And what I tell them, and what many have done even before I even tell them, is to join a Toastmasters group. If you're not familiar with Toastmasters, it's an international organization that aims to help people understand how to speak in public. And it has done wonders for many, many people I know. Some of the most famous public speakers have gone through Toastmasters first. I know I had a client who is an accountant and was very afraid of speaking in public, and decided that This was something that she needed to master. And so she went to Toastmasters, still goes, as a matter of fact, every week, and is now teaching as a profession, teaching accounting. So anything is possible, right? Very, very important skill to learn, because speaking really does put you in the forefront, strategic speaking. The last segment is networking. It's what I call the true gold mine, the crown jewel, if you will. There's a saying I came across recently on a colleague's website that said, your network is your net worth. Now that might just sound like another catchy phrase or a cliche, but that's because it's true. There is profound wisdom in it. So imagine your network is a dynamic, interconnected web. Every individual piece of it, no matter how thin it is, has the potential to lead you to a gold mine of opportunities. So it's not about the quantity of connections that you have, but the quality of the relationships. So here's a little roadmap for you. What I call the depth dive. So that means going beyond the surface. So Joe from accounting, you happen to know that he loves golf. But what drives him? No pun intended. Why does he love golf? Do you know what other things he likes? What challenges he faces in his role? There's always more beneath the surface. And if you display a genuine curiosity, you can unlock deep, deep connections. It won't always be the case. It won't always work. But as long as it works with a few people that count for you, it's about relationships. I remember way before COVID, I was in Montreal working with colleagues in Toronto. And instead of sending an email, I would just pick up the phone. And on a weekly basis, I would pick up the phone and just share what I'd been going through in the office and find out from the other person what they had been going through. And over time, that helped build a relationship. People knew who I was. I had suddenly become visible, all because I took an interest in somebody else and let them know a little bit about what I was doing. The other thing is to not just stick to your little piece of the world, your team, or your department, or your company, or your industry. Go out there, venture out, because the most innovative ideas often come from the intersection of two things that are seemingly unrelated. So have a chat with that designer, or sit down with somebody in sales if you're not in sales. You'd be amazed at the perspectives that you can gain. The other thing to remember is that there's always a give and take. Networking is not a one-way street, never was. The most important thing is what you can offer. What can you do for somebody else? Maybe it's mentorship, maybe it's a fresh perspective, maybe it's an introduction to somebody else in your network. I recently, a couple of months ago, ran into somebody. Actually, I went to a small conference that she was giving and then connected on LinkedIn. And now I realize every single week, every Friday, she posts in LinkedIn talking about somebody from her network that she absolutely believes in and she would like other people to meet. It's brilliant when you think about it. When you give genuinely, you open the doors for receiving. And that's not woo-woo. That's true. As soon as you start showing interest in somebody else, and then you begin sharing yourself, there's a positive and negative energy that happens. Sorry, it's positive energy that happens. You give genuinely, that's the important word, and then you open the doors for receiving. A lot of people have trouble receiving, but it's okay to receive as well. Networks aren't static. They need attention, they need care. So you need to nurture your relationships. You need to let them grow. You need to have regular check-ins, coffee catch-ups, or just a thinking of you kind of message. That goes a very long way. You have to remember it's about building relationships, not just connections. I know people who try to just rack up connections. It doesn't work, especially in today's world. It's all about building relationships. Even sales today, we can't sell without first building a relationship with someone. It's the same thing. And the last thing about networking is to always, always be open. Because you don't know where the opportunities are going to come from. They don't come all packaged with a bow tie. Sometimes they're just in a casual conversation or a shared joke or a book recommendation. The really important thing is to be open, to be receptive, and most importantly, to be authentically you. Most people say, okay, the word authentic is being used and overused today. What does it mean? It simply means be true to yourself. Be true to yourself. Don't try to do something that is foreign to you. But people will say, gee, I'm surprised. That's out of character for this person. Okay. So you need to understand that goes back to living your brand and thinking about how people perceive you. Be open, be receptive, be authentically you. Think about networking as weaving a rich tapestry. Each thread, each connection adds value and texture to the overall picture. So your network is indeed a significant part of your net worth, not just in monetary terms, but in experiences, in learning, in growth. Those are the things that matter. So we looked at leadership, we looked at visibility, we looked at perception and personal branding, very important things. We looked at strategic speaking. Think about where you can speak. Try to find opportunities to speak more often in front of a group of people. Then we talked about, that was strategic speaking. We talked about networking. And we talked about, well, that was it. That was 5. Leadership, visibility, perception and personal branding, strategic speaking, and networking. In the end, I think what's most important is that you never stop learning. Company cultures, companies in general, they're dynamic. So what was valued a decade ago or even a year ago might not be what's important today. So you need to stay updated with industry trends, with internal company views, and at the same time be open to feedback. You need to adapt and evolve with the company culture. As long as you always remain relevant, you will always be a vital part of the organization. Do all of this, and you will easily find your way through the jungle of the corporate world and succeed in a way perhaps you never thought possible. Next podcast, I'm very excited to invite as my special guest Elizabeth Backman. And with her, we're going to delve into some of these subjects in much greater depth. So I'm really looking forward to sharing that with you. Until then, here's to your career reinvention. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to Reinventing-U with me, your host, Danielle Silverman. Tune in on the 2nd and 4th Monday each month at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific on transformationtalkradio.com. Join me and feel inspired and optimistic about your future. We only get one life, so embrace change and thrive with me. Find work that aligns best with your soul and what you enjoy. For more information, go to reinventingu.com.